Every so often you come across a story that just sounds completely made up. A tale of survival so extreme, it pushes the very limits of what you think is humanly possible. Well, today we're diving into what might just be the greatest of them all. This is the story of the Endurance. So, how does a journey like this even begin? It starts with this. This is the actual ad placed in the newspaper. I mean, just read it. There's no sugarcoating here. It's basically saying, this trip will be miserable, dangerous, and you'll probably die. And you know what? Men lined up for the chance. Every single warning in this ad, it would come terrifyingly true. All right, so let's talk about the mission itself. The man with the grand, almost crazy idea was Sir Ernest Shackleton. He was already a famous polar explorer, but this time he wanted to do something no one had ever even attempted, to be the very first to walk across the entire Antarctic continent. And you have to understand, for Shackleton, Antarctica was personal. It was his white whale. As you can see, he had tried twice before to reach the South Pole, and twice he had to turn back, coming agonizingly close. So this 1914 expedition, it wasn't just another trip. It was his obsession. It was his last shot at conquering the one place on Earth that had always beaten him. And this was the vessel that was going to take them there, their lifeline, really. She was called the Endurance, a ship literally built to fight the ice, with a hull made of super strong American oak. On August 8, 1914, with a crew of 28 men and about 50 sled dogs, she pointed her bow south and set sail for the bottom of the world. So after months at sea, the Endurance finally reaches the Weddell Sea. This is the gateway to Antarctica. And it's right here, on the doorstep of their goal, that the entire dream begins to turn into an absolute nightmare. 130 kilometers. That's it. Let that sink in. They were just a single day's sail away from their landing spot, so close they could practically taste it. And that's when disaster struck. The sea ice, which can be up to 18 feet thick, started to close in around the ship like a giant icy fist. Their forward progress slowed, and then it stopped completely. The Endurance was stuck fast, trapped. Now, this wasn't some sudden, dramatic shipwreck. No, this was a slow, agonizing 10-month execution. At first, they hoped the spring would come and the ice would break up. They turned the ship into a winter station. But the pressure just kept building. You could hear the massive oak timbers of the ship groaning, then splintering, and then finally snapping. Shackleton had no choice. He gave the order to abandon ship. And the 28 men just stood there on the ice, watching as their only home, their only link to the outside world, was crushed and swallowed by the sea. And just like that, it was over. 28 men were now castaways on a floating sheet of ice, thousands of kilometers from the nearest human being, with absolutely no way to call for help. The mission to cross Antarctica was officially dead. A brand new mission had just begun: stay alive. And this is where Shackleton's true genius shines. He knew the biggest danger wasn't starvation or the cold. It was despair, hopelessness. So he forced a rigid daily routine. They took scientific readings. They even organized soccer games out there on the ice. He made sure every man felt important, that they were still a crew. His relentless optimism was the glue that held them all together. But optimism can't fill an empty stomach. As the months drifted on, the food ran out. They hunted seals, they hunted penguins. Rations were eventually cut down to a single biscuit per person per day. And then came the most gut-wrenching decision of the entire journey. They had to kill their beloved sled dogs for food. Can you even imagine the psychological pressure? After months of this, the very ice floe they were camped on, their entire world, started to break apart right under their feet. They had to scramble into 3 tiny open lifeboats and face the violent Antarctic Ocean. I mean, think about it. How do you lead your men when the very ground has vanished from beneath you, when all hope seems truly lost? After a week of pure hell on the water, they finally spotted land. Elephant Island. It was the first solid ground any of them had stood on in 16 months. But it wasn't a rescue. It was just a different kind of prison. A desolate, windswept rock offering no food, no shelter, and no hope. They were still completely and utterly alone. Shackleton looked at his men, who were getting weaker by the day, and he knew they were out of options. There was only one chance left, and it was a suicide mission. He and a handful of others would take one of the tiny lifeboats and try to sail for help. This was the beginning of what has to be the most daring rescue attempt in all of human history.
This right here says it all, the sheer desperation. On the left, you have the Endurance, the mighty ship they started with. And on the right, the James Caird, a 22-foot open lifeboat. That's what Shackleton and 5 of his men were about to sail 1,300 kilometers across the most dangerous ocean on Earth. It's insane.
The plan was just laughably impossible. Step 1. Sail across an ocean famous for hurricane-force winds and waves the size of buildings. Step 2. Navigate using only the stars, if you could even see them. Step 3. Somehow find and land on a tiny remote island. And oh, if they managed all that, they'd still have to cross an unmapped, glacier-covered mountain range on foot to get to a whaling station on the other side. If any one of those steps failed, they all died. Simple as that. And yet, somehow, they did it. Against every conceivable odd, after 16 days at sea and a non-stop 36-hour trek across the mountains, 3 skeletal figures stumbled into the whaling station. It was Shackleton and his 2 companions. But his ordeal wasn't over. He still had 22 men waiting for him, stranded on Elephant Island. He had to go back. Remember this number, 28. This is how many men set out from England almost 2 years earlier, full of dreams of being the first to cross Antarctica. And this is the number of men Shackleton brought home, 28. It took him 4 months and several attempts fighting through the ice, but he went back and he rescued every single man. Not a soul was lost. And here's the incredible final chapter to this story. In 2022, they finally found her. The Endurance. 3,000 meters down in the freezing blackness, she sits perfectly preserved, a silent wooden monument to one of the greatest journeys ever undertaken. So that brings us to the final question, doesn't it? By all the normal metrics, the expedition was a complete failure. Shackleton never crossed Antarctica. But by refusing to give up, by saving every one of his men from certain death, did he actually achieve something far, far greater? It really makes you think. What is the true measure of success?